I'd like to call this session the Town of Bridgewater Town Council meeting to order. Can please everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and we got a full house here tonight, so thank you, everyone, for coming. For those watching at home, the Town Council meeting is being streamed live via YouTube. Please go to the Town of Bridgewater Facebook page for the link. To start off with, I do have one condolence I'd like to share. We'd like to extend the condolences to the family of Douglas Lemo. He served in the U.S. Army and served in Vietnam, passing away August 31st, 2024. Can we have a moment of silence for Mr. Lemo and all veterans that have passed here in the town of Bridgewater? Thank you very much. All righty. So we will start off with approval of minutes from previous meetings. For the meeting minutes of August 27th, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Discussion, please?
Ms. Ellenberg?
Don't you need a second?
Yep. Second for discussion, if you have a question.
Second for discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a tiny little change, which is in the minutes of August 27th, page 5 of 42. The second to the last line says, Councillor Ellenberg noted it would provide an inside situation, the will of the voters. It omitted the word versus. An inside situation versus the will of the voters. If that extra word could be amended into the minutes, please.
Okay, that's fine. So a motion to amend the notes, putting verses in before the will of the voters. Are you making that motion? Do I have a second for her
I
motion?
guess I will make
Yep.
it on top of his motion.
A second for her motion on the amendment. Ms. Striggles, okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. So then on the overall approval of the meeting minutes, I did have a motion and
Second.
a second from Mr. McKinnon. All those in favor of passing those minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And for the meeting minutes of the Special Town Council on September 3rd, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Mr.
Second.
Chase, second, Ms. Ellenberg. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? None, thank you, so motion carries. All right, next up, we have announcements from the president. I just have one that was shared with me from the town clerk. She wanted me to remind to the parents of college students who are having a ballot mailed for the presidential election to confirm the mailing address that we have on file at the town clerk's office. Ballots cannot be forwarded, so the town clerk's office doesn't have the correct address. The student's ballot cannot be delivered. And then just as a reminder, schedule for in-person voting for the presidential election here at the council chambers, starting Saturday, October 19th through November 1st is varied dates. So you can certainly check with the town clerk's office for those dates. But I'll read them in future meetings as we get closer to those dates. That's all I have for announcements of the president. We will go into some proclamations that we have here tonight. We have a few proclamations to pass out, so we got a lot on the proclamation agenda. The first one that I will bring up is a proclamation for the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States 125th Anniversary Proclamation. Whereas the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, VFW, was founded in 1899 by a small group of veterans who returned from campaigns on Cuba and in the Philippines, banded together to create a veterans organization that would advocate on behalf of all veterans. And whereas the VFW is a nonprofit veterans service organization comprised of eligible veterans and military service members from the active, Guard, and Reserve forces. And whereas the VFW's mission is to foster camaraderie among United States veterans of overseas conflicts, to serve our veterans, the military, and our communities, and to advocate on behalf of all veterans. And whereas since its inception, the VFW has been instrumental in the establishment of the Veterans Administration, National Cemetery System, and the creation of every National Veterans Memorial. And whereas the VFW has played a vital role in virtually every significant piece of veterans legislation passed in the 20th and 21st centuries, to include the honoring of our pact, the most significant expansions of veteran benefits in history. And whereas the VFW's 125th anniversary is being observed on September 29th, 2024, this date shall officially be known as VFW Day. And now therefore be it resolved that we, the Bridgewater Town Council, do hereby proclaim September 29th as VFW Day in honor of the VFW's invaluable contributions to the veteran community in Bridgewater and around the world. We hereby stand with the VFW to ensure veterans are respected for their service, always receive their earned entitlements, and are recognized for the sacrifices they and their loved ones have made on behalf of this great country. And witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and cause the seal of the town of Bridgewater to be affixed today, September 17th, 2024. So we wanted to make that for the VFW on behalf of their 125th anniversary. Our second proclamation, which I think is a good portion of our crowd here tonight. Before I read the proclamation, I'll just read a little background information about it. This summer, our Bridgewater 12-year-old American All-Stars became the first Bridgewater Little League team to win the Massachusetts State Championship at the Little League level of play and advance to regional play in Bristol, Connecticut. I'd like to read off the players' names. I think many of them are here tonight. Logan Brady, Bryson Bucher, Luke Fantasia, Jake Florence, Mason Genatasio, Jeremiah Gonzalez, Cam Goodwin, Hunter Mahargu, Brendan Moyer, Landon O'Hearn, Micah Poulter, and Jake Tayag. And their coaches are here as well. Manager Rich Florence, Jeff Moyer, Brian Goodwin, and Cash Mahargu. So round of applause for the coaches as well. So for those who weren't aware of what they went through, I just want to give a little highlight of some highlights that they gave me about their journey. The journey began with the district tournament where the team traveled to Barnstable to kick off tournament play. The team went on to beat Middleborough, Sandwich, and finally Plymouth in the District 7 Championship to sweep the District 7 tournament, which is the first time they had done that in their history. The team then went on to the sectional round of the tournament, starting off with a tough loss to Braintree, but then they bounced back to beat Shrewsbury and Mansfield, which earned them a rematch in a winner-take-all game against Braintree, and they beat them 5-3 to win the Section 2 title. With winning that Section 2 championship, the team advanced to the state championship Final Four tournament between Bridgewater, Pittsfield, Acton, Boxborough, and Melrose. First game again, they had a tough game against Pittsfield, but they pulled out a 4-1 victory. Game 2, they lost to Acton, Boxborough, but they came back to beat Melrose. They went back similarly to that last round to face Acton, Boxborough again and beat them for the state championship title. And I guess in that game, Bryson Bucher hit 3 home runs and was an outstanding pitching and defense in the state tournament, was named that state tournament MVP. And they got a nice escort back by the police and fire department here in town. They moved on to regional play in Bristol, Connecticut, facing teams from Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, and us representing Massachusetts. We defeated Vermont in the first game 9-0, but they had tough games against Maine and New Hampshire, which ended their run, but they came ever so close to making the big dance. So, again, well played, guys, and you did a wonderful job. It's never been done before in the town, so we're all very, very proud of you. So we have the following proclamation to read for you guys. Whereas the sport of baseball has been recognized as our nation's pastime, And whereas Little League Baseball is a program for the youth in the community that is dedicated to teaching sportsmanship and the competitive will to win, as well as physical fitness and the well-being through healthful activity. And whereas the town of Bridgewater is extremely proud to be the home of the Bridgewater Little League, which has served the youth of Bridgewater for many years. And whereas this past summer, the Bridgewater 12-year-old American All-Stars became the first Bridgewater Little League team to win the Massachusetts State Championship at the Little League level of play and advance to the New England Regional Play in Bristol, Connecticut. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater, Massachusetts does hereby declare September 17th, 2024 as Bridgewater Little League 12-year-old American All-Star Team's Day in honor and appreciation of their accomplishments of the players and the dedication and support of their coaches and parents. Big round of applause for these guys.
Can I have the team and the coaches come on up to present the certificate?
Hello, kids.
So afterward, guys, I want to go around and shake all the hands of the town council members. Okay, head coach? Yes. Congratulations, sir. Congratulations on half the town, and thank you for all you've done for the team, and congratulations on all the success.
Thank you so much. We're truly honored to represent Bridgewater. And these guys couldn't be a better group of kids to represent us. So, really proud of everything they've done and how far they've come. And I look forward to what they'll do for Bridgewater moving forward.
That's great, guys. One more, everybody.
Congratulations. Hey, nice to
Thank you, sir. What's your name?
Congratulations.
It's nice to meet you. Brian
Come on,
Goodwin.
you state champs.
Thank
Let's
you.
go, boys. Come on.
Congratulations.
Come on. Good job, boys. That's quick adversity. We said we got this.
Congratulations, good job. Congratulations.
That's on me. That's on me. One more. You messed up.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, oh.
Congratulations.
There we go, brother. Good job, guys. Good job.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Should have brought some water.
Congratulations.
Good job, guys. Thanks for coming, guys. We appreciate it. Oh, is he here? All right.
Got a person on third base. All they needed was one more base hit, and they would have made it to Pennsylvania. One play away.
Yeah. Oh, you were like listening.
I was watching
Thanks, guys.
in passenger while I was driving home from New Hampshire.
Yeah, because I remember you mentioning that. Yeah.
And actually, I didn't see that the VFW representatives were here. Can I have the VFW representatives come on up for this
My
proclamation?
nephew was, because of the cutoff, didn't make it with Middleborough last year. Because Middleborough went to Pennsylvania last year, which would have been cool if he was there. But I'm trying to get him to come out here, though.
Mr. President, may I make a comment with regard to this last commendation?
Certainly. Go right ahead.
Today is September 17th, Constitution Day. Got a question for everyone in the audience. What are the 5 named freedoms in our First Amendment? That's all.
Okay. We'll take that up in Citizens Open Forum, maybe. All right. One last proclamation to read, and obviously a very good one here. City of Peace Proclamation. Whereas the World Health Organization defines health as not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, but achievement of a balance of physical, mental, and social well-being. And whereas peace is not merely the absence of war and violence, but a condition where society has achieved a balance of prosperity, security, justice, and hope. And whereas peace is necessary for everyone to achieve health as defined by the World Health Organization, and whereas the citizens of Bridgewater want to work together to create and implement initiatives that not only foster peace, but create a positive, lasting change in our community and around the world and become a model for other cities. This vision for our future should build on the expertise of each person and involve all segments of our city in planning actions and making a difference. To this we are committed. And whereas the concerned citizens and community leaders of Bridgewater are committed to establishing peace in the town and beyond in order to promote understanding, economic opportunity, and improve the quality of life in our town. And whereas the United Nations has designated 21st of September of each year to be the International Day of Peace, devoted to commemorating and strengthening the ideals of peace both within and among all nations and peoples. Therefore, be it resolved that in 2023, maybe 2024, 2023, the Bridgewater Town Council proclaimed the town of Bridgewater, Massachusetts, USA, a city of peace and perpetuity. And it was further resolved that the Bridgewater Town Council designate September 21st of 2024 and each year to be the Town of Bridgewater Day of Peace and Perpetuity. And be it further resolved that the Bridgewater Town Council, community leaders, and concerned citizens develop policies and procedures that promote establishing peace in our town in perpetuity. In witness hereof, this day, 17th of September 2024. Do we have anyone here to receive that?
Yep.
Okay.
And, Mr. President?
Yep.
There were flyers that were passed around to the councilors anyway that talked about the 21st to the 28th being Peace Week, and there's a whole bunch of activities that are going on from the 21st through the 28th, which I'm sure they'll elaborate on.
All right. All right, so let me present this to... All right, so with that, I'm going to let you stay up there. I'm going to get right to Citizens Open Forum. So before we get started, I just want to announce that due to Massachusetts open meeting law requirements, discussions will not take place during the public comment period. If appropriate responses to questions, concerns will be given by the town manager at a future town council meeting. And please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you. My name is Christina Ajemian, and I live at 221 Aldrich Road. I'm a member of BCCR and of the group chaired by Fran Jeffries, who's here with me as well, the group that was formed to draw attention to the need for peace here in our community and around the world. You've heard the proclamation being read, and a lot of the tenets of what we stand for and what we hope for were read. I want to thank you, Mr. President, and the members of the Town Council for the opportunity to speak tonight, and thank you for supporting the proclamation that was before you this evening to commemorate International Peace Week from September 21 to September 28th, and especially, as Mark Lindy mentioned, this Saturday as the International Day of Peace, and especially also the next Thursday, September 28th, as the International Day when the world focuses on the total elimination of nuclear weapons, a shadow that hangs over all of our days. This is our 4th annual celebration of peace in Bridgewater and beyond. Bridgewater, as was read, has been designated International City of Peace by UNESCO under the United Nations, and Bridgewater is part of a global effort on building peace. Our local partners in this endeavor are the university, the public library, the Rotary Club, the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church, DICE, and BCCR. Together, we have planned a week's worth of events and activities designed for the participation of all people of all ages. The events begin this Saturday, the International Day of Peace, with a standout for Peace for All at the corner of Broad and Main Street from 10 to 11 a.m. On Sunday, the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church starts their program for peace at 9:30 with the rededication of the peace pole that has the word for peace written on it in many languages, and there is a similar one in front of the library. If you haven't noticed as you walk by, it's in the right-hand corner surrounded by beautiful flowers tonight. As we walk by, I noticed that. The Social Justice Choir from the Martin Richards Institute will perform at the Unitarian Church, followed by a service developed around developing a culture of peace. For details about the times and locations, you have, I hope, in front of you this schedule, and also that you can refer to the wonderful piece that was in Buzz Around this past weekend that gave a lot of details as well. The efforts of peacemakers are not always welcome, but the need for peace grows, more urgent every day. Peace, safety, prosperity, and quality of life for all is not just our hope, it is our right. We hope you and the community at large will join us for this week for peace in Bridgewater and beyond. Thank you. And Fran, I know wants to say a few things too.
Oh, sure, please, go right ahead. A name and address for the record, just one more time.
Francis Jeffries, 35 Shaw Road. I would just underscore what Christina has shared with you and invite you to these events. They're all free, they're open to the public, and we'd love to see them well attended. So thank you again very much.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. Anybody else like to come up and speak for, please?
Good evening, councilors. My name is Eileen Heine. I live at 316 South Street, and I'm speaking to you this evening as chair of the Open Space Committee. I want to let you know about a project the Open Space Committee has been working on for the past couple of years, and it's resulted in a new hiking trail at the town's Wyman Meadow Conservation Parkland. You may not be aware of that parkland. It's been a very well-kept secret for the last 24 years or so. But you might be familiar with the water department facility that is located at the same site. It's off of Plymouth Street. There is an access road to the town water department facility that also crosses the conservation land, but it's unmarked. So unless you know it's there, it's between two houses. It's hard to find. A bit of background: in 2000, the town purchased 55 acres of what had been the Wyman Dairy Farm. And of the 55 acres, 20 was dedicated for water department purposes, and 35 acres was designated as public open space to be used for passive recreation. The water supply parcel has been used for its intended purposes right along, but the 35 acres of conservation land has never been managed or promoted by the town as a site for passive recreation. There was a kiosk with information there put up maybe 20 years ago, and a trail cleared on that property, but neither was ever maintained. And Natural Resources Trust of Bridgewater also at that point had a very extensive consultant's review and analysis of the property done, but it was never put into play in any town work. With this the Open Space Committee became aware that 41 acres of conservation land adjacent to the town property on the east side was owned by the Wildlands Trust. I think most of you are probably familiar with Wildlands Trust. They manage some properties here in town, particularly the Great River Preserve, which is a fabulous location in Bridgewater. The Wildlands Trust refers to their parcel as the North Fork Preserve, and they acquired it in 2001, but because of its location, they were not able to provide any public access to it at all. It just didn't allow for any kind of a public trail, or because there was no access to the street for parking. And with this in mind, the Open Space Committee suggested to Wildlands Trust staff that the town partner with them to provide access to their property via the town conservation land and the existing town road. This collaboration happened, and the result is a new 1.5-mile trail loop that goes around the town conservation land for approximately half a mile and continues on Wildlands Trust property on the banks of the Taunton River and back. It's a beautiful trail, and Wildlands Trust has already placed a bench overlooking the Taunton, which is a really lovely spot to pause. The trail was cleared by Wildlands Trust volunteers, and a small visitor parking area adjacent to the road has been laid by the town highway department. One really positive aspect of this project is that Wildlands Trust is going to be solely responsible for maintaining the trail, and so the town is never going to have to be responsible for taking care of it in the future. Our committee and the Wildlands Trust staff have worked with each other and very excited to have achieved this through our joint efforts. And we're planning an opening event at the trail site Saturday, October 5th at 10 a.m. We'll be sending invitations to town council members and a number of the involved town committees, the Conservation Commission, the Parks and Rec Department, and others, the Community Preservation Committee, probably. And we're also planning to have guided hikes for the public on a time-staggered basis that day. Details are still being worked out, but once they're finished, they'll be posted and sent to you. Parking is limited at the site, and the trail is narrow, so as nice as it would be to have hundreds of people show up, that wouldn't work very well, so we are going to try to do something a little more organized and contained, and sort of a low-key celebration. So you will get an invitation, as I say. Please note it on your calendar if you can, and we hope to see some of you at 10 a.m. We do think that this is just a really exciting project, an exciting collaboration. And I kept Michael Dutton informed on it along the way. I expected he was going to make this announcement to you at some point, but be that as it may. And I've also, Councilor Chase came out and visited the property with me over a year ago before anything actually had started. The Conservation Committee approved it. There was considerable amount of work that had to be done because the property is very wet, bog boards and bridge crossings, et cetera. So there's been involvement by the town, but Wildlands Trust has really borne the burden of most of the on-the-ground work.
Right.
So that's
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else like to come up and speak at this open forum? Ray, come on up.
Ray Jimmy Knowledge Road. I really didn't intend to speak tonight, but based on what Eileen just said, I just want to make sure you're aware of how two government entities can cooperate. With the federal government and the local government, we did Stiles and Hart. If you haven't been to Stiles and Hart, you should. I've been there before. It was done. It was in terrible shape. It's in great shape right now. It's still not quite done, but it's just a perfect example of how a couple entities can work together. And it's just an added base for the town. So I commend whoever was involved in it. It's done very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Anybody else? Please like to come on up. Oh.
Good evening, Ed Ivaldi, Boxwood Lane. Several months ago, shortly after our former town manager announced he'd be leaving, a private meeting was held between selected members of this body and the town manager to discuss a strategy for his replacement. That meeting, unbeknownst to other members of the council at the time, produced a plan that consisted of a 5-person search committee with, oddly enough, the same 5 people that are being recommended tonight in the appointment agenda item. Upon reading the agenda, my initial reaction was simply one of shock, which then turned into disappointment, frustration, and ultimately a sense of anger towards this body. Why is that, you ask? Well, let me remind you that you were all elected by the people to be their voice and to ensure that our government is free from backdoor politics. In fact, the charter says that you all serve at the will of the citizens. The reality is it doesn't seem to be working. You say that you listen and you want input from citizens, but yet your actions don't reflect it. Over the past several months, you've been given lots of feedback from citizens on the structure of the search committee, the potential process to be used, and who should serve as representatives from the community. This feedback had been given at many council meetings, citizen grassroots meetings, some of which you people attended, emails, phone calls, and conversations around town. Yet based on the votes taken at your last meeting and what is pending tonight, the reality is you don't seem to care about input from the citizens. This is reflected in the fact that nothing has changed since the outcome of that meeting 2 months ago with Mr. Dutton. We asked you to form a committee and put citizens on the committee to create a more diverse cross-section of people, and you simply ignored it. The reality and perception by many is that you have pushed the people away and are doing things your way. It appears that as long as you agree with the citizens, then everything's fine. But if you don't agree, then you simply vote your own personal preferences. If you really wanted citizen input, then let the feedback received be reflected in the outcome. What citizens have witnessed over the past several months can only be described as dysfunction, chaos, ineffective leadership, and disunity among our elected officials. In the end, when citizens feel they're being ignored by the council, as members carry on their own agendas, the level of trust will diminish and ultimately will lead to a broken legislative function within our town. Leaving citizens out of your decision process is simply not an option. It is obvious that united, we do not stand on the town council. So divided, we will fall, until the citizens put in office those councilors who will listen to them and not pursue their own personal agendas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Valding. Anybody else like to come up? Mrs. Hanson.
Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. Mr. Evaldi kind of stole some of my ideas. I should have gone first, but he says it more eloquently than me. But as far as the ad hoc committee appointments, as I of others have said, we really wanted more than 5 members, but I guess that ship has kind of sailed. But what I was hoping for was different members to be chosen for the ad hoc committee instead of the same 5 that Mr. Doughton had initially picked. Nothing in particular against anybody that's on it. I want that to be clear. It's just, as far as making the fit, I always just kind of feel it's almost the same people that are picked for this, for everything. So that kind of was my first impression when I saw it back when Mr. Doughton had put them in, but then I thought it was erased. But it seems like it's the same, it's obviously the same 5 is put on there. And the only comment I have is, I don't feel that the president should be on it because you have a lot of other duties to be concentrating on, and time-wise, I don't think the president should be part of the committee. I feel strongly about that, and I've had others that said the same thing to me. If you're going to ask me who I would like to see, again, nothing against anybody, I would like to see Mr. Lindy mainly because of his previous experiences. I think he would be a better fit, and I would like to see that. I know it's the town manager that picks, but it's the town council that approves them. So I would like to strongly see if we can come to a compromise. But again, nothing wrong with the president. I just say you have too much duties to be concentrating on that committee. And the last thing is on the resolution RFY 25-001. Excellent idea, but unless I'm reading it wrong, I just feel it should go a little bit further and say that the POW-MIA flag is not just flown on National POW Recognition Day, but every day. And that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson. Anybody else like to come up and speak? Dr. Hunt.
Thank you, Carlton Hunt, 80 Austin Street, Vice Chair of the CPC Committee. I wanted to update you. We are as you may know, we are in the middle of a update of our 5-year plan as required by law. So we're pursuing that, and we have recently received a working draft of the plan right now. But we also have held 2 focus meetings, one on housing and one on historic preservation. We have 2 focused meetings coming up on the 23rd, one on it's open space. It's open space and passive recreation. The 4th meeting is active recreation. We can fund that and recommend it to you, and you then appropriate the money as you see fit. You just can't increase it. You can decrease it or deny it. So the focus groups are going underway. Number 2, we also have a survey that's been developed for the town to take. It takes about 15 minutes. I just took it this afternoon. It's got some links in it that you can learn a little bit more if you don't know about CPC, and I'm happy to talk with any of you about that and go forward. So that's available, and it will be, the survey has some postings that we'll do with the QR code for the survey. Basically, it's we need your help. We need the town's help. I encourage each of you to take that survey. It will help us prioritize what we're doing going forward with the CPC. We're also going to post these at the library, the senior center, the town clerk's office, and the social media in town, probably the residence page in 02324. So we'll post that so people can sign up, use the QR code, et cetera. Where am I? Number 4. We will also have a public meeting in November. We've set the date, November 4th, 6:30. It'll be a virtual meeting for the entire public to come and participate, hear what the plan is, what the goals might be, help us with the goals, and talk about the various things that are going on there. So that's on November 4th. I'd like everybody to pencil that one in.
What time?
6:30, I believe, virtual. We'll be posting it too. Actually, we've got a flyer on that also. So our consultant has been hard at work. Where am I? We'll also receive a working draft for us, the CPC, to review in late October, our meeting in October. We also welcome and encourage everyone to take that survey. You've heard some of the good news here tonight about open space, that kind of thing. There's much more to be done. Housing's a major issue, so we really appreciate if people will come out, talk, take the survey, and speak with us. It's really an important issue for the town going forward. We actually can recommend funds. Not very many people can do that, or committees can do that. And I think there may be some exciting news coming down the road fairly soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Anybody else like to come up and speak for Citizens Open Forum? Mr. Vivaldi.
Vivaldi, Boxwood Lane, in the spirit of keeping with my 3 minutes earlier, I had a few extra things I wanted to mention here. A few questions related to the search committee appointments further on down the agenda. First question is, why is there only one woman being nominated for the committee when there are currently 4 women on the council? Including the school committee member, that would be 4 men and 1 woman on the committee. Perhaps selecting 2 men from the council and 2 women from the council might be a better mix by adding a more diverse perspective. Number 2, why is it that one council member who has extensive experience by serving on other search committees has been ignored, while other nominees who appear to have no experience at all have been selected? Common sense says that having the kind of experience would only add value to the process. Yet for some reason, this person was totally excluded and no explanation was offered. It smells a little like dirty politics to me. I thought it strange at last week's meeting that there was no discussion on the sunset date for the committee, which was chosen as the town election in April. Was this date set randomly, or was there a particular reason this date was chosen? No one really talked about it. Perhaps it was to address the risk of Councilors Perry and Chase losing their seats on the council and thus being unable to continue serving on the committee if the committee was going to go further. If so, that seems inappropriate, as it's certainly possible that the search process could take longer. We've heard that other cities and towns, it could take anywhere from 9 to 12 months, depending on how many candidates apply. So why wasn't the end date set 12 months, just to be on the safe side? By setting next April, you have now put a constraint on the process by forcing a decision to that date and disbanding the committee as well on that date. Lastly, I've asked numerous times over the past couple of months about the revenue the town has incurred from retail marijuana. You guys have probably heard me talk about that. And I believe Bill Wood also asked to add any incurred costs, things related to public safety, health, and the school committee, but there's been no response yet. So I guess the question is, why has there been no response from the town manager's office on that question? Maybe next meeting we can have a response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vivaldi. Anybody else? Please come on up.
My name is Pearl Cohen, 35 Willow Ridge Drive.
Russell Greenberg, also 35.
And we have
Willow Ridge
something
Drive.
really simple to say. We would like to see a sign erected in front of the Bridgewater Academy building that says town offices or town hall. We both work as professional petitioners on a statewide basis. We go to different cities and towns to turn in nomination signatures and ballot petition signatures, and we've never seen a city hall or a town hall that didn't say town offices or town hall or city hall, and we just can't figure out why there's no sign in front of the Bridgewater Academy building. That's it.
Yeah, and can I add that I presume that it's not going to cost very much money, and it'll do nothing but accentuate the appearance of the landmark Bridgewater Academy building.
That's true. I mean, it's just like a simple request, because we're in the business of collecting signatures, going to different cities and towns, and like we said, we never seen a city or town that didn't make it clear that that particular building was a town hall.
Yeah, we go all over the state.
So it's a very simple request, and we really thank you. I know you're all volunteers. You're not getting paid to do this, and we are so grateful that you're doing what you're doing and that you're giving us the opportunity as regular people to make this simple request. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Anybody else like to come up and speak? Going once, going twice. All right, very good. Thank you for all those that came up to speak. All right, now we will move on to item E, appointments. We do have the appointments to the ad hoc committee that we approved at our last meeting, as brought forth by the interim town manager. First up is myself as council president. Is there a motion to approve the appointment?
Before we do the appointments,
Yes.
can I make a comment?
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm going to make it as a blanket comment for all the people listed here. I appreciate the citizens that came out and spoke about listening to citizen input. There was a lot of it. I personally attended most of the citizens committee meetings. I, too, am extremely disappointed that citizens were not listened to in this process and that the same 5 names have come up. I do happen to have more experience than anybody on that list. I'm not nominated. I wasn't asked. There was no discussion about it. It was just a selection process. Unfortunately, because of our town charter, which I believe has many flaws in it, an abstain vote is a no vote. You can't vote present, and you have to recuse yourself, which means you have to leave the room and say nothing publicly. So rather than not say anything publicly, I will be forced to vote on this. And I consider colleagues and friends, but I do not support this. I think it's been a done deal from the get-go, from day one, and it's now been carried over to the next town manager. And I would urge my fellow councilors to reject this. Thank you.
May I make a comment, Mr. President?
We're not having I probably shouldn't have allowed that, but right now we can have some discussion if we want. You know, I'm going to get a motion and a second for discussion. So, starting off with myself, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Mr. Chase, and a second for discussion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Striggles. Did you have a comment you want to make, Mrs. Ellenberg?
Just that we don't want a situation which is an inside deal. I'm sorry, these are my comments. And so I think we need to go further into discussion and listen to the citizens. I think amendments might be in order in terms of...
This isn't an amendment. This is an appointment. There's nothing to be amended.
Well,
if not everyone is
actually,
appointed, then we'll have to bring new appointments forward at the next meeting.
that would be acceptable to me if these appointments are not accepted, but I would like to make an amendment to your appointment, nothing personal, please, but to substitute your name for Mr. Lindy's name.
You can't, the name is put up for appointment. You can't substitute
Yeah,
a name.
it's not a motion, it's an appointment.
It's
So
not-
there's a name that's brought before you for appointment. You could vote it down, certainly. And then, again, though, the appointment comes from the town manager's office, so you don't get to dictate, even if you could quote-unquote amend an appointment, which you can't. The town council doesn't make the appointment, they ratify the appointment. So the town manager makes the appointment, which is what you have before you, and then it gets voted by you all for ratification. So that wouldn't even if you could amend it, it wouldn't be a proper order.
And I hope that the counselors, all of us, will listen to the citizens. And the second thing is that I would, well, I'm not in order right now, but I would like to see this move to the next meeting.
We can't move to the next meeting. The appointments are up for now. We're going to go through the list of appointments. If they're approved, so be it. If anyone's not approved, then we'll bring up any additional appointments at the next meeting. Ms. Robinson.
I'd like to make a couple of comments addressing some of the things that have been said in recent meetings. I too have been part of some of these discussions with citizens, and I think it is accurate in some regards around some citizens do want a much larger group with different, please let me say my piece. And I have also heard from individuals within some of those same constituent groups that have said, you know what, we realize it's challenging, we trust this council to do their job. So I want to be really careful about broadly asserting one point of view from the citizens. We have 29,000 residents in the town of Bridgewater. We have been hearing from a very good number of very vocal people, but I also don't want to discount the fact that we've had conversations with people outside that vocal group as well as inside that vocal group. So that's one thing. There's also been some assertions that we are inexperienced and there's only one experienced counselor, and no disrespect, Mr. Lindy, you know I know your background. And I'm only going to speak for myself personally. When this topic came up, I too have extensive experience in search committees for executive positions. I have hired. I also have fiduciary responsibility for my employer. And a lot of skin in the game in terms of my professional position. So when this opportunity came around, I actually reached out to President Perry. I'm being very full disclosure here. I said to Councilor Perry, I said, if there's an opportunity, I would love to be part of the search committee because I have experience. I also expressed the same thing to Mr. Dutton prior to his departure as well. Nobody came to me and said, Susie, we're doing this secret deal. I literally volunteered my services because I was interested and I have applicable experience. So I just want, I've said this before, I'd be really careful around broad statements. If you have issues with individuals, please just talk to each other. Talk to me. I've never been contacted once by these other counselors who have concerns. I have not been contacted directly I have been contacted from a few individuals in the community about topics that they care about or are experiencing, but nobody has reached out to me and said, hey, what's really gone on with this thing? Why are you being named? So I would just encourage folks to talk to each other individually. It's unfortunate, and I get it, it's politics, but I want to reiterate once again, I think that we're all trying to do the right thing with the information that we have at hand today. So if we have individual issues with individual counselors, please address them. But I think to lump everyone together as backroom dealing and this nefarious plot it's just simply not accurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Mr. Lindy.
So, two things I just want to say. One, in response to what was just said, that I do not believe that anybody else has public search process for a public government official. I do. I did reach out to Mr. Dutton. I did not reach out to Councilor Perry because it was a town manager appointment. Okay, I got an email from him, which I did not agree with whatsoever. Okay, and I haven't liked the process from the get-go. I'm going to stay consistent with what I've said, and I don't feel comfortable with any of it. I'm also going to ask that we do a roll call vote on all the appointments.
That's fine, I can do that. Any other comments from any other councilors? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. The way I'm going to vote is like the President and the Vice President of the United States do not sit on the same committee, so I think we should follow suit with that. And also, it would be nice to have one of the new councils to be on this ad hoc so they can go through this process and attain the knowledge that the ones who have been here the longest.
So we'll-
Counselor Murphy and myself are new counselors. This is the second year of the term.
Any other comments from any counselors? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. This is for my appointment to the ad hoc committee.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
And Ms. McGrath?
No.
6 in favor, 3 opposed.
Okay, so I am appointed to the ad hoc committee. Next up is Council Vice President Paul Murphy. Do I hear a motion to approve? Is it Ms. Strigels and second by Mr. Chase. Any discussion on the appointment? Seeing none, I'll also ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
7 in favor, 2 opposed.
Okay, that appointment is approved. Next up, Councilor Fred Chase. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
For second, and Ms. Strigels on second. Any discussion on the appointment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes?
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
7 in favor, 2 opposed.
All right, the motion carries. Next up, Councilor Robinson. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So,
Ms. Strigel, second by Mr. Chase for discussion. Any questions on the appointment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
yes.
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Dr. Perry?
Yes?
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
7 in favor, 2 opposed.
Thank you, that motion carries. And finally, School Committee Chair Tim Fitzgibbons. Do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Mr. McKinnon, do I hear a second? By Mr. Paul, Council Paul. Any discussion on the appointment?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The school committee is charged with picking a new superintendent of schools, the members of the school committee, okay? I don't believe I would be asked to be on a search committee for the superintendent of schools. I know it's been said that 55% of the budget is, in the town budget, is the school department budget. But the logic doesn't make sense. I happen to know the person being appointed who was a former counselor, who happens to be a friend of mine. He may not be at the end of this vote, but I apologize if that's the case. But I do not think it appropriate, especially with all the citizen input that we had. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'll just, Ms. Robinson?
I think just a comment, just as a reminder, I had brought this up in the last meeting as well, that in some ways, I thought maybe it would have been better to have a more flexible fifth position in terms of some kind of elected town official, whether it's a library trustee, et cetera. Because I see Mr. Lindy's point as well around, we would probably not necessarily be invited for a search committee for a superintendent of schools for the district. However, I think it was helpful understanding that this is truly just for this specific search, which is a temporary decision. So I just want to remind the audience of that.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. I'll just add to the fact that Mr. Fitzgibbons was a prior counselor, and he was involved in a prior ad hoc committee that searched for Mr. Dutton when he was hired. So his experience could be helpful to this ad hoc committee. Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our charter actually says under the Bridgewater Raynham School District Committee that the district committee may meet with the town council on educational or budgetal issues and to discuss these matters. So I do believe that we should have an administrator or a teacher for on the ad hoc.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
And Ms. McGrath?
No.
6 in favor, 3 opposed.
Thank you. That motion carries. So we do have our ad hoc committee set, and we will be in touch with the members to set up an initial meeting to start the process for reviewing firms for the search.
May I ask a question, Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Will the rest of the council be kept apprised of what's going on with the committee?
As much as we can discuss publicly, sure.
Are we counselors allowed to attend as citizens since we're not on the committee?
No, it's more of a, it's going to be more of a executive session type of format for the ad hoc to start.
I was thinking that as a counselor, I have been elected, and if I attend as a citizen, I will simply
It's
be
not
a
open-
witness to what happens.
It's not open to the public.
No, but I am elected.
I think it depends on what the meeting is, right?
Right.
Certain things can be discussed by the ad hoc committee by going into executive session. Citizens cannot attend executive session. If there are matters that don't require executive session, then those should be held in
Then
an
those would
open
be
meeting.
And then I can attend as a citizen.
In any open session, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's but if there is a majority of the council that would attend, we'd just post it as a meeting as well, just to protect all counselors who would want to attend.
Thank you.
We will do that. Thank you. Moving on, there's no hearings this evening or licensed transactions, but we do have some presentations to get going with. The first one will be the sewer resource presentation by Environmental Partners. So I'll turn it over to them for the presentation.
So I just wanted to tee this up. I understand earlier this year, the council heard a presentation from Environmental Partners led by Helen Gordon, our consulting engineers, about the water system and the master plan. So tonight, the topic is sewer. So when people are done with water and they give it back to us, we're going to talk about all things related to that and help everybody's knowledge base on that topic be a little deeper. So thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Blythe. So I'll just get started with introductions, and then that should be up shortly. Mr. President, council members, my name's Helen Gordon. I'm a principal at Environmental Partners. With me here tonight is Kate Russa. She's a project manager at Environmental Partners. She'll be assisting me with the presentation this evening. We have a few agenda items that I just put together, so we'll go quickly through some background, which we can do without the presentation, and then I'll just remind you of the things that I brought up at the last month's meeting regarding enterprise funds and the importance of how to manage them appropriately, and what the goals are, and what the goals are set by the DPW and the town manager and the water and sewer department in order to have a healthy sewer enterprise fund. So in terms of background, the difference between water and wastewater is that a much smaller percentage of the community is served by the wastewater treatment facility and the collection system. So we call the wastewater system a collection system that consists of pumps, pipes, and so forth, and the service connections. So the total number of customers is about 2260. so 2,260 customers, and it's made up of residential, commercial, and industrial. And then, of course, one of your largest customers is the Bridgewater State University. So they do, a large percentage of your flow does come from them. The collection system itself is about 35 miles of gravity sewer. There's 15 miles of low-pressure sewer, and then 15 pump stations. Now, out of those 15 pump stations, 8 are owned by the town, and then the other 7 are privately owned by small developments that were built over the years. The original treatment facility was built in 1960. So that's your plant's aging. It's a little younger than I am. It was upgraded in 1987. And currently, we have what we call Phase 1 under construction. That's the nitrogen removal upgrades, which is a first of 2 phases of upgrades of process at the treatment plant. And Kate will get into the details of that shortly. And then just a data point, your average daily flow is 1.08 million gallons per day, and you have a permit capacity of 1.44. So let's talk again about enterprise funds, just to reiterate from last time. The three pieces to focus on are operation and maintenance, capital costs, and financial stability. In terms of operation and maintenance, you have your budget, you have regular maintenance that's done on a daily basis, a weekly basis, ensuring that you have a skilled workforce. So part of your O&M does include training that you need to do with your staff and so forth. Managing energy costs and consumption and chemicals. One of the things that your water and wastewater sewer group does is a part of consortium and collectives to get better prices for chemicals and so forth, which is an important thing to do. And then, of course, emergency response. So that's one leg of the three-legged stool that we're talking about. In terms of capital costs, you have 3 basic areas. One is consistent upgrades of an existing. So not just new processes, but even existing pumps have to be upgraded on a regular basis. They only last for so many years, their life expectancy is short, and they have to be replaced. New infrastructure is typically required if there's either a new regulation that comes into place, which there have been a number over the years. Because you discharge to Taunton River, you do have nitrogen and phosphorus removal limits that are now being ratcheted down. And then ultimately, we'll be dealing with PFAS and disposal of your residuals in future programs. And then technology upgrades. And I mentioned at the last meeting, the town went through a modernization of the water meters, and that was just as important for the wastewater as it is for the water, because the bills that are created for the sewer system utilize flows from the water meters only for those customers who are on the sewer and on the water. But it gives a better estimation of what people are actually contributing, so you capture the revenues appropriately. So that was an important project for both the water and the sewer enterprise fund. And then financial stability, making sure that you have enough cash revenues, managing your user fees, and managing the revenue streams. Managing any risk that you see in terms of revenue volatility and how the market is going in terms of your commercial users and so forth. Maintaining a healthy bond rating, which Bridgewater has a wonderful bond rating, and you've been able to leverage grant and loan funds at low or 0% interest for both water and sewer. And so you've got the three legs of the stool that you need to continue to support the revenues that you're going to need ultimately for the improvements at the, in the system. So what I'd like to do right now is have Kate come up. She's going to do similar to what I did, is go through a capital program, what the improvements are going to be over the course of the next 10, 15 years that are investments that are needed for the sewer system.
Thank you, Helen. Mr. President and the council, to start, I'm going to just jump right back into the collection system. And what I like to do when presenting the hard work that your DPW and all of the staff with the Water and Sewer Operations Department does is I want to demonstrate the continuous investment of the community over the last few years to kind of give you a sense of what brought us to the capital improvement list that we have to share with you today. So first up, a look back at the collection system again. That's how the wastewater journeys from a home to the treatment plant. There have been incremental investments over the last 10 years to be able to upgrade based on age, based on regulatory requirements, as Helen mentioned. And so over time, there's been investment into the collection system, such as capital projects for sewer rehabilitation. You're actually repairing the pipes that may have eroded due to age or just the shifting of the ground that causes fractures in pipes that are small, but it allows for non-sewer flow to get into the pipes, and then you ultimately pay to treat it. So eliminating that through the removal of inflow and infiltration is one of the investments that the community's made, as well as pump station upgrades. So you do, as Helen mentioned before in the overview, have several pump stations that are town-owned, and those will require upgrades as the lifetime of the equipment ages. There's also been new infrastructure, such as the Pleasant Street Sewer Extension, which brings in new ratepayers to the enterprise system, and also helps to encourage better stewardship of the environment by relying less on on-site septic systems, by connecting users to the sewer system. The last item under technology for the collection system, and Helen touched upon this, so I won't go into all the details, but essentially a large investment was made through the water metering upgrade process that ultimately benefits the wastewater to be able to more accurately bill customers for their usage. Next slide, please. Currently, what the town is doing every year is around 45,000 linear feet of sewer inspection and inspecting about 165 manholes per year. There are still definitely areas of the sewer that are older and they contain materials like asbestos cement piping or vitrified clay piping. And as you know, we're here in New England. The brittle material that's vitrified clay tends to move over time as the ground shifts, as things settle, and asbestos cement pipes, we know, are no longer the best method of technology, and they're harmful to, essentially, they need to be removed and replaced. As they age, they can crumble, they can fall apart, and then they pose a risk to the groundwater. So that's something that's ongoing for the collection system project, and it is an investment that the sewer users support. Also cleaning and inspecting, so even if you're not replacing, you do need to maintain a level of inspection throughout your system. So the areas that have been completed are around Fox Hill Drive, Pleasant Drive, South Drive, and South Street. And another large portion of the collection system is the qualified operators that need to take care of and maintain the system. They're the people that when you call with a backup emergency are showing up and serving the customers at all hours of the day and night. Wastewater operations is a 24/7 job, and being able to recruit and retain qualified operators is absolutely a priority for the operation of the collection system. Next slide, please. So a recap of the FY19 project. This was a cornerstone of the wastewater capital program. The comprehensive wastewater management plan was updated in 2019 by the town of Bridgewater. It was a town-wide study that had a 20-year future time horizon. So having been completed in 2019, there was older data used as part of the plan. That's typical. So it looked back at 2013 demographics when planning on a future horizon. And that study identified sewer needs areas based on environmental concerns, such as areas of soil that might not be amenable to an on-site system, differences in setback distances per Title V, a lot of different variations and factors, but essentially they identified these main sewer needs areas as areas for expansion for environmental purposes. So that was something laid out in the 2019 plan that was accepted by MEPA in 2020. You were granted a MEPA certificate. During the peak of the COVID pandemic, things got a little funny with the public hearings, but ultimately the town did receive that certificate. So, next slide, please. As part of that recommendation, there was also a wastewater treatment plant facilities upgrades recommendation made, and these recommendations were based on the age of equipment and capacity of the town to be able to replace parts. What happens with a lot of treatment plants, as Helen mentioned, that are built in the 1960s and upgraded in the mid to late 80s, we're starting to see a lot of clocks run out when it comes to buying replacement parts. So being able to stay on top of replacements for condition, modernization, and efficiency is a big point. Also looking at the nitrogen and phosphorus or nutrient removal aspects. So the recommendations of the CWMP, the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, were to refurbish the primary clarifiers. That's one of the process areas at the treatment plant. To reduce nitrogen through the continued use of the rotating biological contactors, or RBCs. That's another part of the process at the treatment plant. And then it also did recommend that the town request a permit increase from 1.44 million gallons per day to 1.54 million gallons per day. And then, as I mentioned before, extend sewer to areas where there is no sewer currently for the purposes of environmental improvement in those areas by removing on-site systems and putting folks into the sewer system. So the biggest driver as well that I wanted to mention, as Helen mentioned before, we have a NIPDES, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, bear with the acronyms. That is an EPA permit that we have to discharge the clean wastewater, the effluent, into Town River, which then goes into the Taunton River watershed, Town Brook. So ultimately, a lot of the conditions for nitrogen and phosphorus removal are coming from our federal permit requirement, which is mandated by EPA and also enforced in part by Mass DEP. So some of those benchmarks are what we call non-negotiables. Those are items that, as the operations team is meeting other similar environmental parameters, nitrogen and phosphorus have been added to their permit. Next slide, please. So what does that mean for the current treatment plant? What are we doing to be able to meet those permit requirements? As I mentioned, we have our CWMP recommended plan that's been implemented, MEPA approved, ready to go. The administrative order on consent, the town of Bridgewater was given an administrative order on consent in 2017. We have recently amended that ACO with revised timelines to be able to provide the town of Bridgewater with more time to be able to get both phases of the upgrade done. No one could have foreseen COVID-19 and the impacts that are still rippling through the construction industry at large. And so that was in part one of the reasons why we were looking to amend that. But however, that ACO requirement and the NIPDES permit that the town has are, at this point, not negotiable. They are agreements with EPA and Mass DEP for performance that our treatment plant needs to meet. So Phase 1, as Helen mentioned, is currently under construction. The town appropriated $43 million towards that upgrade to be able to provide for the end of useful life or the old, worn-out equipment that needs to be replaced simply because you cannot buy replacement parts for items. And to the credit of the operations team, they have well outlived their expected useful life because of the great maintenance and operation work that the operations team has taken over the last 25 years since the last upgrade. So there also are current building code requirements that need to be met. Again, the last time some of those buildings were touched were as long ago as 1960, or more recently 1980, and 1987. We've had significant building code changes since then. The nitrogen removal processes, again, we are adding a new component, a brand new tank to the treatment train, as we call it. So we're adding in, as well as taking advantage of the existing treatment processes that the plant has. And another big item too, the last bullet here is, I'll keep harping on the compliance-driven necessity of these upgrades. And also, we're in 2024. We need to also keep in mind the added security and controls that are required based on being connected to the Internet of Things, and also wanting our treatment plant, which is a critical process, to be secure. Next slide. So, the $43 million appropriation, ultimately the town was able to work with and apply to the Clean Water Trust through the Massachusetts State Revolving Fund, which is administered by DEP. This is a program that provides billions of dollars to the state, to communities in the state every year, with low-interest loans to be able to provide upgrades such as our Phase 1 upgrades. Through that program and in working in close hand-in-hand, essentially, with the financial department, we were able to secure a 0% interest loan so that the entire $33 million construction contract is at 0% interest for the 20-year lifetime of that loan. And we were also, that will secure $5.2 million in savings to the ratepayers of Bridgewater, as well as the principal forgiveness through ARPA funding, which was another $5.6 million loan lifetime savings to the town from day one. So those are programs that, as your consulting engineer, I'm going to highly encourage you continue to support or urge you to consider those as you look to move forward with the funding of Phase 2, because those are real values that go right back into the enterprise system. So we're currently conducting a wastewater cost analysis, basically to better understand where some of these funding opportunities may be able to benefit and support the ratepayers moving forward, as well as keeping in mind that these investments will still need to continue as soon as we're able to continue with Phase 2, but also equipment is always running. As I mentioned, wastewater operation is a 24/7 job. That equipment really never sees downtime. So we're going to be looking to strategize timing of capital projects in order of priority so that the most important items are being done first and funded accordingly. So, moving to the future, what the CWMP, that 20-year time planning horizon, and the NIPDs and ACO compliance items have in common is you have a 20-year time horizon of upgrades looking forward that you will need to plan for to be able to keep your system running at the efficiency expected by the permit. So, as I mentioned before, in 2023, Town of Bridgewater renewed and received its updated NIPD's permit. And as I mentioned before, earlier this month, we were able to negotiate and finalize an amended ACO with revised timelines to accommodate Phase 1 and Phase 2 completion dates. So Phase 2 is now going to be required to be constructed by 2031. And we, at this point, environmental partners, have an conceptual, so it's a preliminary cost. There has not been any design work towards Phase 2 to date, but we have, based on what the CWMP had provided for the remaining items to be completed as part of this upgrade, including phosphorus removal, we have estimated a conceptual opinion of probable construction cost to be $56.8 million. And again, to reiterate, it's towards ACO compliance. This is adding in the new phosphorus removal requirement, which is now a part of your mandatory ACO, as well as NIPD's compliance, so ongoing security controls and any increased monitoring. So if there are items being added, you also need to collect data for them every day. Usually, again, these data points are being collected 24/7. And then there's also items such as the new personnel and vehicle garage. Those items have not been improved since the original 1960 building. So the addition of new facilities to accommodate the personnel and the qualified operator team that you're looking to retain here in the town of Bridgewater, as well as chemical feed upgrades, disinfection upgrades, and the future problem of, which is now, biosolids management. It's the feature of understanding what is on the horizon or what we can expect to come to the wastewater field following in the drinking water footsteps of monitoring for new contaminants, such as PFAS and other items. I'll call that the factor of we're going to be monitoring for things we don't know yet when it comes to solids management of wastewater. So that's for the treatment plant capital projects outlook. Next slide, please. Yep. Looking for the sewer utility as a whole, what we're looking at is recommend completion of a wastewater asset management plan. This is essentially combining facilities within the collection system out in the neighborhoods with the treatment plant to be able to take inventory and accurately GPS any updated items that need to be mapped or updated based on that cleaning, any repairs that have been done, and just making sure that you have a digital copy of those systems. Completing a CWMP update to reflect current development and future needs. So as I mentioned before, the CWMP that you have was developed using 2013 demographics. We're in 2024. Mass DEP recommends that you update, it's called an adaptive management strategy, that you manage your expectations of your CWMP as your demographics may shift or change. So it's officially been 10 years since the last demographic pool was done for wastewater planning. So we'd recommend that you would look at your plan about every 10 years or halfway through your CWMP cycle. And then, as I mentioned before, outline the 2026 priorities for capital assessment based on the prioritization of risk. What are the items that are most critical to the system? What items are the most critical and in the worst condition, and prioritizing them based on the risk of that asset failing. And that range of cost forecasting, the results are pending because of that wastewater cost analysis that we're currently undergoing. So that concludes the presentation that we prepared for you and the updates that we have, but we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Any councilors have any questions based on the presentation? Councilor Paul.
Thank you for the presentation. I would just like to ask a basic question that I may have missed last time when you presented, but who is Environmental Partners? Could you talk a little bit about that company and what your relationship is with the town?
Absolutely. So Environmental Partners serves New England. We're part of an Apex company, which is a national-based engineering consulting services firm. We serve as the owner's project manager, or OPM, for the town of Bridgewater for the current Phase 1 upgrades project. It was actually my first week of work that I interviewed to be selected by the town of Bridgewater for this position. And ultimately, our role is so that was 4 years ago at this point. So we were selected to oversee the design process, the bidding, and now construction of the Phase 1 upgrades. And we have also been able to perform other on-call tasks depending on what items have come up that we have been able to put in proposals for and were selected by the town to do. So such as the wastewater cost analysis that we're currently doing. And we also have a proposal to be the owner's project manager for Phase 2 as well.
Okay, thank you. And just, sorry, a couple more. You mentioned there's 2,269 or 64 customers that are on sewer in Bridgewater. Can you give me a percentage of how many folks that connects to? So out of the possible however many, what would you say that is a percentage of the town?
So I think I heard the item before of it's about 29,000 is our population, so
Yeah.
you could say less than 10%.
But that's, so 29,000 is the population, but you're saying customers, so that's households, right?
It is households, I take it back. So it could be upwards, let's do the 2.5 household per capita item. So you're looking at roughly 30%, less than 50% of households.
So about 50%. Do you know, maybe you don't know this next question, but,
A third, it is 30%. It
so
is
a third of
30%.
households you say are on the sewer system. Do you know how many percentage of the commercial is on the sewer system versus not?
Probably more like 10%.
10% of commercial versus not? That's helpful. Okay, that's all I.
Not including, just for clarification, not including the college.
Not including the college, yeah. And the college is included as a customer in the number, I would assume, because you listed them there.
One big customer.
And that's just one big customer. Yeah.
Ms. Robinson.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I will confess, I of course don't understand some of it, but there's a couple of broad things I kind of wanted to ask. So I have a couple questions and then probably a question for the town manager separately. As we think about our current state in terms of, aging infrastructure, this is part of that story, right? If we did a simple scorecard of we are green, yellow, or red, where are we today in terms of being able to stay at capacity, be operational, what we need to, for today? Any sense of that?
Can I ask I'm going to follow up your question with another question. Presently, the capacity of the treatment plant is 1.44 MGD. The daily operation of the plant is at 1.08 MGD. What Mass DEP requires is that the treatment plant must operate at or below 80% of its discharge capacity, which the town is meeting. However, the margin between what the average flow is, the 1.08 MGD, and 80% is limited. So that is where the prioritization of those capital improvements that I mentioned based on risk is going to be critical in making decisions on which areas are prioritized for sewer expansion. Per the CWMP, the priority areas have already been identified. So those are kind of prescriptive in terms of what has already been decided through that process, but that is something that through adaptive management the town could revisit. In terms of the stoplight assessment of like an overall system grade, I would argue it's a little hard to tell, simply because the treatment plant is currently under construction, so the goal will be that when that upgrade's complete, you'll be in compliance with your new permit. That is the goal. That was what the treatment plant was designed to do. But I don't know if I could give you a firm grading on like the collection system as a whole yet. But that's absolutely something that we can keep in mind if that's a helpful measurement for the council.
I mean, I think it's a loose assessment because it's one of the big concerns around, and I don't want to speak for the whole council, but that the community has been concerned around is future development. So in so many ways, we need to continue to build an economic engine. And then in so many ways, we are pretty much stymied by the fact that we don't have the infrastructure to support it. So as I think about, and then the challenge with long-term projects is that you plan for a projection that you think is where the town needs to go. But then by the time you get all your appropriations, you get moving, blah, 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 years pass, and suddenly you have to readjust. So I also wonder, as we think about the future and potential capacity needs, are we going to be prepared with these kind of investments?
Question statement. Are you all set, Ms. Robinson?
Well, no, I'm actually kind of curious, like, what's the response to that?
Yeah, go, Mr. Rowley.
Through you to Councilmember Perry. Similar to water.
Yeah.
We are looking at alternatives. I was going to talk about this as part of Vision Reality, but we initiated conversations with the Department of Corrections last year. The timing was appropriate because they needed to make upgrades to their plant. They have much more room for additional capacity. The idea was initially to redirect wastewater from Bridgewater State University to the prison. Currently, the flow from the university is almost 131,000 gallons a day, or about 10% of what our total is. So that would free up additional capacity at our existing plant. But the other thing, in terms of long-term planning, looking at the opportunity to bring those neighborhoods between the university and the prison online for sewer, and then also potentially bringing sewer down Bedford Street, which would allow for future economic development, similar to what we have talked about with water. Now, those are major infrastructure projects that are going to require a combination of federal, state, and local money. But we have started, I know people sometimes think we're not doing anything with Vision and Reality, but those are ongoing conversations we're having in both areas. In fact, we have a call next week. The governor's office, through the lieutenant governor's office, actually has been very instrumental in bringing DEP and DOC together with us. So we're meeting again next week to kind of walk through this. Another issue on the table at the state is not seriously considering, but it's on the table, is privatization of their plant, because privatization of utilities is something that governments are looking at. So those are ongoing conversations. None of the people that told me that when I first interviewed for the job, I asked about infrastructure capacity, and I was told there was no problem. There is. I have the same concerns that we've heard today. So we are actively looking at infrastructure, and that is on the flow chart that we initially had for Vision Reality. Infrastructure is one of those elements.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Sorry, it looks like he wants to say something back there. Is that allowable?
Azu, did you want to make a
Yeah.
comment?
Come on up.
Just for clarification,
Yeah.
any proposal for extension of our sewer system actually will require, as part of that SCO that we have, we at least need to finish our upgrades before we can do that.
Right.
Now, it would be a great idea if the DCO and the DCAM were to make available sewer, but we cannot predicate just for clarification here, we must be careful to say that there is capacity, because the EPA will not look favorably in terms of our compliance requirements. So any planning for expansion, you probably want to be looking at, do you really have that capacity available to take that university sewer in that neighborhood? That would be a wonderful thing. But I just want to make sure that in terms of what we have and burden on the town residents, considering that's a very limited section of people that are actually paying for the sewer, that expanding that will be predicated on meeting our compliance requirements.
Okay. And sorry to hog the floor here, but I have just two other, maybe, one is a request, and then the other is sort of I'm not sure how we'll solve it, but one of the requests is, a while ago, we did pass an order around increasing sewer rates, and I think it was like 50%. And one of my pieces of feedback to town administration had been, it'd be really helpful to have a really planful set of communications, not only for residents, but also for our commercial and industrial owners, because that was a pretty significant hike. And, it's similar to what we did with water, where it's like a few years back, we did this increase of like 24% in 1 year. It's like, those are not insignificant for people. So I know that we need to continue to increase rates, but, having some really good visibility in terms of what a schedule could look like for the next few years, I think would be really helpful, because everybody has a stake in it, right? The last comment I just wanted to make too is I was just looking back at my notes. So we had a presentation about water back in July. So now that I'm looking at it, water investment for infrastructure improvements and the investments that we need to do for 2026 through 2030 will be $68 million. And then sewer tonight, as we're getting this update, is around from 26 to 2031, we're looking at $57 million. On one hand, I'm sure every single city in town in the Commonwealth is facing very similar, but on the other, it's definitely huge concerns around, those are big numbers, and we don't have, and I know we keep saying state and federal and, and et cetera, but that's over $125 million that we're looking at here for the next 5 to 6 years. So I know we don't have a solution today, and I know that there are plans for grants, et cetera, but I think staying in touch in terms of how we'll manage through that and what that impact will be on the community and to taxpayers is going to be incredibly important to understand. Thank you.
All right. Mr. McKinnon.
I just want to thank you both for the presentations, and then I need a zoo up here. I got a few questions for you, brother. Just like last time, come on. How are you?
Can't do any better.
How's the progress going with Phase 1? How are we looking? Do we have a seasonal date when we think we could finish up? For just Phase 1?
Okay, just Phase 1, which deals with the nitrate treatment.
Yep.
We are hoping, if I'm not mistaken, we have just, we're actually going through a change order right now with the contractor, Irish White, for an extension. They're looking for extension, and I believe we're looking at December 31st, yeah.
Of this year?
Of this year.
Yeah. All right. Are we still financially, all the money appointed, we're good? That might be a question for Laurie, maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah, she's the prosecutor.
Yeah.
But I think we are okay with the finances.
Because I remember we had a presentation before, and the prices looked like they were going up, but even just right there, it did look like Phase 2 prices went down a decent amount too, so that's good for the future. And I've lived on Spring Street for 25 years, 2 different houses. I'll tell you one thing, for 23 years, I didn't want to go outside, but at night, now I do. So whatever's working down there has been working.
Yeah, amen.
Good. That's it from me, Azu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Anybody else? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was, I learned a lot. Thank you for that. So we have on Curve Street 150 homes going up. How do you determine the wastewater that they will use? Is it per bedrooms, per gallons? Sorry.
So for Curve Street, the typical method is to use Title V, which is the Massachusetts State Sanitary Code, has prescribed measurements for estimating flow based on whether it's business or residential, and an approximate amount of water to be estimated for wastewater from each home. So that's typically done per bedroom in a residential setting. For Bridgewater, because we did do the updated water metering, you are able to refine those numbers to be able to look at what a closer to number would be. Title V ultimately is what needs to be used when you're putting forth design for a sewer, like a brand new sewer extension, because Mass DEP will need to review the technical design of that work before it can be built. And so they're going to look at Title V flows, but because we have that water meter data, we're actually able to kind of compare that as well to see what the real life impact would be, not just the model numbers.
So they're going on
it's a
town
combo of
sewer?
both. Say that again?
Is all those homes going on town sewer?
What?
So there's residents that live on that street for years that have their own septic tank in their well. So are they required to tie into the sewer and the water because they're that project?
I'd have to check your town of Bridgewater health bylaw, but typically homes that were on septic while the sewer was being installed have a special agreement. They're usually called a variance with the the Board of Health so that they're able to delay putting their home onto sewer based on the agreement in their variance. So it depends, to be honest. It depends, and those homeowners, I would recommend they reach out to the Board of Health to be able to better understand what they're required to do or what they're required not to do based
If
on
they're
that variance.
required, do they have to pay for it?
If they are required to connect, then yes, they will need to put forth a betterment similar to how other homeowners have paid previously.
And that's a lot of $1,000, right?
I have to confirm with the sewer department and the DPW to figure out what the fee is at this point. But that's information that should be readily available through the DPW.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, do we have our digestibles broken down in tanks at our sewer?
Could you
treatment?
elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by,
Well, when I was looking up different systems, some systems have the digestibles that are in a tank and broken down by a temperature,
okay,
and they give off methane gas.
okay.
So if we had that, we could either sell that gas or use it to run our facility. I was just wondering if
I
we
see where you're
had that.
going. So the digestion is a specific process for solids being handled. The town of Bridgewater does not currently digest their solids. They currently have a composting program. So the sludge or the solids are settled, collected, thickened even more, and then pressed so the liquid is removed to create what's called dry cake. That dry cake is then mixed and rotated following a standard compost practice, and that's where the town of Bridgewater is able to sell that product or to cart it away using a cart contract. For digestion, that absolutely could be an option that the town can explore with the design engineer as part of the upgrade. Absolutely, there are several plants in Massachusetts which use biogas, is what that's called, to be able to use the digester. The concern I would have as an engineer is the space on that property and the proximity to the residential areas surrounding the current treatment plant. So that might be something that would need to be talked about through the design process for phase 2. But no, there's no currently digestion happening with the opportunity, unfortunately, to capitalize on the biogas.
Okay, so presently, how many staff members do we have? Because you said that we need more.
Yep, so Jonas, I might call on you for your full-time equivalent as of today and how you've been able to work with your team for hiring. I'm going to pass the mic.
Currently at the treatment plant, we have 3 operators and 2 mechanics. And in 2 weeks, we should have 2 more operators on staff, which will bring us up to a full load of staff members.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So my other question is, the nitrogen that gets in the water, is that because of chemicals and prescription drugs and cleaners that go into our water?
Part of it is, yes, but most of it is because we are humans that will create waste, and part of our digestion process is that we need to excrete the excess nitrogen. It also might come from soaps. You're going to see, this is mostly for phosphorus, but a lot of products that you use, think about what you use to wash, think about what you use to brush or cosmetics, yes. But for the most part, the largest contributor of nitrogen in the wastewater is from human
feces.
Waste.
All right, last question. So
Our thing.
once we fix, the water's purified as best as you can, it goes into the Taunton River?
Ultimately, that is where it ends up, yes.
And does it run over a waterfall to introduce oxygen first before we put it back?
It does. So the process at the end, the plant uses chlorine gas to disinfect seasonally. And as part of the chlorine contact tank, or the tank that the water moves through at the end stage, there is you could call it a waterfall, but essentially it's running over a weir, and it is providing aeration at the end of that process, so after it's been dechlorinated. So it is a dechlorinated, oxygenated effluent that is running out into Town River.
Thank you very much. You explained things very simply, so it was very nice.
Ms. Driggle, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank you for a very thorough presentation. It was very helpful that we had this one days in advance so we could come in with some thoughts and some points of clarification, so I really appreciate that. in regards to Councilor McGrath's questions about whether or not someone would be forcibly made to tie in, typically in my professional life, I am a realtor, so typically I deal with this quite a bit, especially in this town. If there is an active sewer line in front of someone's property and your septic does fail, it is usually on the part of a town or a municipality to have you tie in at that point because a better option is available for you. I can say that as someone who is septic dependent. It is a better option to be on sewer. And ultimately, you are not forced to ever tie in, but you do have the option to voluntarily tie in if there was a line in front. But you do fill in your old system and you go through that process, but you aren't forced to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Eagles. Mr. Chase, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also echo that. Thank you very much for your presentation tonight. This has been, I think, very helpful for us on a very confusing subject, with a lot of moving pieces, by the way. Just one question I have with respect to the town's wastewater permit application before the DEP. You referred to it to increase the average daily flow, I think, to 1.54 million gallons per day. And I'm wondering, well, what is the status of that application? Has that actually, that has not yet been granted to the town yet, am I correct?
That is correct. The permit increase has not been granted to the town yet. Nor has an application been filed by the town to increase that discharge capacity. At the time the CWMP made those recommendations, the ACO, the administrative consent order deadlines were in effect, which prioritized deadlines for the nitrogen removal upgrade and the phosphorus removal upgrade. There was no requirement to increase capacity of the treatment plant in the ACO, so therefore, prioritization-wise, it fell to third place, or whatever place is after those two.
But it's something that is pending.
Not yet, so it's something that has not, no action has been taken
Okay.
to file that application. That would still need to be filed. It was a recommendation of the CWMP to file it, but it was not filed yet.
Do you have some notion as to what time period might be anticipated with respect to, hopefully, approval of such an application?
So typically, the process to expand your discharge will require pretty significant modeling of your collection system and looking at where you plan to expand the sewer to understand the entire collection system. So you're not just looking at pieces, but how the system will function as a whole. So in terms of timeline, I really can't say, just because the priority and the main focus has been really meeting these ACO timeline deliverables, which are nutrient focused and are focused on removing pollutants from the plant. So that's something that can be looked at as part of the phase 2 upgrades if the town chooses so. When I'm talking about that number, that estimate that I did give you before, the 56.8 million for the conceptual OPCC, that did not include any additional costs to increase the plant capacity. So without belaboring the point too much, when you go to increase your treatment plant capacity, you do need to take into account all the different flow conditions. So on your worst day, it is raining cats and dogs, and you've got full tanks. How are you able to move flow safely through your system so it's not backing up in homes? And that level of upgrade to increase the flow to the plant is not quite as easy as turning a lever to full speed. It will require looking at the treatment plant as a whole to make sure that you're able to accommodate, whether it's by making tanks taller or adding extra pumps to make sure that you can move flow safely, which will require additional thought and engineering behind that decision. So it is a little bit more complicated than just applying for it. We also will need to demonstrate through the design that the plant can handle it.
And just to piggyback on that, so you remember we mentioned that the comprehensive wastewater management plan is due for a refresh because you were looking at the 2013. it would be an updated CWMP, so you'd just be updating the base and saying, based on this, this is where we're going to be. And that document would be used for the submission for the requests for the expansion of the plant, where you would give some recommendations on how you would be able to upgrade the plant, as Kate indicated, to increase the capacity.
Okay. Just one last question, if I could. The areas of need that were identified, now, there are, maybe 8 town streets that are listed there, something of that sort. And I've seen them on a map before. And I'm just wondering, is there time sensitivity as to when those areas of need might need to come online?
I'd have to look back at specifically what the CWMP said. Weston and Sampson had pulled that together. I have read through it, but I don't recall. And it was based on future demands and so forth. So I don't think there was specific timing on that phase. I think the initial phase was the phase of all the customers that you currently have, and then the others would follow as you could expand the system. But I'd have to defer to Azu if he had specific dates or plans associated with the needs areas.
Thank you.
2 clarification points here. In terms of expansion, in talking with the DEP and the EPA, while all the engineering, and they've done marvelous engineering work, but they will not be open to any consideration for increase. I just want to be clear, for increasing the capacity until we've done the upgrades that we embarked on. So both the nitrate and phase 2. So you're probably realistically looking at 2031 if we meet that treatment requirement. So I just don't want to leave it here, having everybody think that you submit the application, boom, it's done. Part of the consideration for that application is that we do the upgrades that are in the pipe. With respect to Councilor Chase's question, the needs areas that we identified, the areas that are prone to a floodplain, where your septic systems can be afloat. Okay, so it's more of the threat, what they call the threat to public health, safety, and welfare, and the environment. So the areas, for example, years ago, the area around North Street College, their septic systems were in failure, contaminating the groundwater and actually overflowing overground. So that had to be done. That became an emergency. So the areas down on South Street to Atkinson Drive, that area is very prone to flood damage, and a lot of the septic systems actually, you couldn't build those today because you wouldn't be able to build your septic system in a floodplain. And so those are going to be priority areas. So if your sewer goes in front of your property right now and your septic system is in failure, you can petition to tie in. We allow you to tie into sewer. The Board of Health will look at whether there is an imminent threat to the public safety, health, and welfare should you not be able to tie in. So they have to look at that in mandating whether you tie in or not. But right now, we have to upgrade the system.
Thank you.
One more question, Mr. Eagles.
Thank you. I think that was part of my question, was whether or not if we don't get through the upgrades, I know that the amount of the million gallons a day would need to be increased. Does it need to also be increased in order to add those other areas in to support it?
Not the niche areas, because you still have that capacity.
I wasn't sure if there was if that was being built into the numbers that we kind of already are working with in the event things do progress faster than 2031 without that permit potentially getting approved or applied for. It hasn't been in motion yet.
Thank you, Mr. Eagles. Go ahead.
Through you to Mr. Rulli, I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly before, that you stated that when you were hired, you were told that we were okay with capacity, and
Well, it's a question that anybody in my position, in any community, infrastructure capacity is the key to development. If you don't have it, then you're not going to expand. So it definitely was a question that I asked. I think Mr. Chase was there. We were at Restoration Coffee. And then when I quickly got here, I realized that it was a little bit more challenging than was represented to me.
so what does that mean for future development?
I think that that is why we have a element of vision to reality to be infrastructure, that it's a balancing act, that we know that we have to improve the existing system. The numbers that Ms. Robinson shared are numbers that come due whether we do any future development or not. So the balancing act is, making sure that we can have the funding to improve our existing infrastructure, have the funding to potentially expand our infrastructure, but also look at alternative sources. And then the balancing is against how do you expand your tax base to pay for that. So those are all of the things that we are delicately negotiating as we go through vision to reality. And this is what we've talked about, the need for funding. The state has recognized that, as an example, that MBTA communities puts a burden on communities to balance housing with infrastructure. They're making money available for infrastructure to support new housing. So it's critical that we're part of those processes, but looking at opportunities like the prison, looking at things regionally, are smart growth, things that we should be doing, things that we are doing, but take time. And then, again, there's a fair amount of coordination on the funding side as well as on the organizational side, because DCAM cannot access federal money, we can. So all those things are going on a weekly basis, those conversations.
So there's a lot that has to go into place before new development.
No, I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. None of these larger developments are going to happen overnight. They can be phased in, but we need to be vigilant looking ahead to keep the process moving. As I said, these are multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects that also are going to include conversations with the MBTA in order to have a right-of-way along the trail, the train tracks. So, but things that keep me up at night.
Yep, thank you.
All right, and that's a good segue. We'll get right into...
May I ask a couple of
sorry,
questions?
Ms. Ellsberg, good to you.
Thank you. We were talking about funding, and are you making progress on the payments in lieu of taxes with the college for funding?
So, do you want to answer that?
So the college is an exempt entity, and so they're not required to make payments. The state pays every community that has state-owned land in the community. And in Bridgewater's case, it's the university, it's the prison, it's any other state-owned land. And we receive about $800,000 a year for that on a formula that is far too complicated to just try and discuss tonight. The $55,000 is something that's come about for about the last 10 years, I think. I was told that conversation must have happened between the town and the university as a good faith effort for what they appreciate that we provide to them. So those are two things that happen, but they're not obligated to do that.
Thank you. Another question, in terms of generating revenue on the local level, this might be a crackpot idea, but what about the town selling the compost aggressively and putting it into the enterprise fund?
I know from my past experience, I did at wastewater treatment plant, we had sludge and not cake, but again, with some of the concerns on PFAS going forward, that may or may not be a lucrative market going forward because the additional testing that will have to be done. There is, they can speak to it, but
I'd like our Jonas to address that, because that's who is.
Jonas, come on up to the microphone.
I can't
Thank
hear you.
Since I've been here in the town in 2003, we have been marketing the compost through a company, Earthlife at one point, and now it's another vendor that buys our compost, and then he turns around and markets it to the landscape companies. So we've been doing that since I've been here and previously before me.
Would you happen to know how much money that generates?
Offhand, no. It doesn't even pay for our composting. The problem is, the good thing about it is we get rid of the compost. That's the major thing, and we get something for it. It's not a money-making thing.
Don't have to pay to
for us.
get rid of it. You all set?
I'm set, thank you.
All right, so we'll move forward, Mr. Rulli, your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really just going to give you some comments.
Updates.
Presentation. So we have had the amended zoning ordinance has been submitted to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. There are 177 MBTA communities that are required to file. 74 have filed to date. 3 have actually been determined to be in compliance. We think we're getting close because we've had a lot of questions in the last 2 weeks from Department of the Executive Office of Housing, Livable Communities. In addition to what I just shared with respect to infrastructure, as many of you know, we just recently had a workshop on traffic and pedestrian improvements. The consultants will be back with 2 alternative plans, hopefully by December. That's positive. We have 2 proposed, not officially filed yet, one will be, I think, tomorrow, development projects, one in the CBDS and one in the CBDR. The R is 70 through 78 Broad Street, as we refer to as the Friendlies Assemblage. That is a proposal for a mixed-use project, a reuse of the bowling alley, the addition of 4 residential duplex units and a 4-story mixed-use building. Very excited to see what that looks like. There is also, we anticipate a proposal for 96 Main Street. That has been through Historic, and demolition of that building has been approved by Historic. A final number on how many townhouse units will be included in that has not been finalized. In both cases, we've had the developers sit down with the fire department to see what their needs are going to be. Sometimes people wait till the last minute to do that. I think it's much more prudent to do it up front. So, I mean, those are exciting projects that are going to add housing and some economic vitality. I know that there's a lot of conversations going on with other property owners. I'll say that our town and gown relationship with the university is getting stronger all the time. There's a matter on tonight that will kind of highlight that, but the university is very excited to see what's happening with the traffic and pedestrian improvements, very excited to see what we do with the downtown area. So I know people think there's not a lot going on, but there actually is quite a bit going on.
Very good. Any questions from any councilors? Ms. Robinson?
I wanted to wait for this update just as a follow-up, since I know that there have been multiple discussions with the prison around a wastewater redirection or capacity help. When, do they have any sense around when their system upgrades will happen through state funding?
They're out to bid, or they just went out to bid. As I mentioned earlier, we have a meeting with DEP next week and DCO, so I think conceptually everyone is in agreement that it can be done. It's a question of how it's going to get done. And so, I mean, I think, you know, in the perfect world, we're looking at a 5-year horizon to, you know, get something like that done.
Okay, thanks.
Any other council questions? Ms. McGrath?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Rulli, I have 2 questions. Since the center of the town is a mixed-use district, they're not a 3A compliant district, and we can only use 25% of these units towards our MBTA requirements. Have you calculated how many units we'll be able to use from our mixed use? Because we have to have, what, close to 1,074 units?
So under the MBTA legislation, we're required on paper, they don't have to build them, 1,401 units. Whether we move the MBTA platform or not, we're in compliance. The 40R is just east of, or just west of Waterford Village. That's been in place for 10, 15 years and no one's done anything. So with or without moving the platform, we are in compliance with the MBTA legislation.
Okay. And the other thing, the presentation, the next presentation, could we have a question and answer rather than putting questions on the stickies? You know, you could have someone with a mic go around to the audience. And it's been almost 2 weeks. Can we have the answers and the questions?
Yeah, they're working on getting the survey questions back. As soon as we have that, we'll certainly get it to members of the council and post it on the website. We anticipate doing a e-blast through the Vision Reality site at the end of this week. So my expectation is the survey results will be part of that.
All right, and one more. You said you haven't gone back the approval yet, because I know mixed-use district has to have a special approval. Have you heard from that, back from that?
Our zoning amendment that adopted the form-based code doesn't need approval from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. The approval for the MBTA communities legislation is the designation of the zones that we've established. So it has nothing to, doesn't impact, if for whatever reason the compliance wasn't given, that doesn't stop any of the new development projects that we're looking at. That piece of the zoning is independent of meeting the density requirements that the MBTA communities requires. As I said, whether we move the platform or not, we're in compliance. The numbers are there.
From the waterfront district, or that whole area down
Or
there?
that 40R, whether because of the amount of acreage is there and because of the amount of density you can get per acre, plus what the existing housing is.
So what's the 40R? It's that MBTA requirements.
40R has nothing to do with MBTA communities. It has to do with, it was a program that the state put forward to promote housing that gave density relief, similar to MBTA communities, but it was just under a different program. At the time, again, that area adjacent to Waterford Village was designated to be the place to do it because it was undeveloped, but no one has ever moved forward to develop that.
But we're not compliance with the MBTA requirement?
We
The
are.
1,400?
Yeah, we are,
We
absolutely.
are.
Yep.
So then we don't have to move the train?
Moving the train isn't to support the MBTA communities legislation. Moving the train is to create a vibrant downtown transit-oriented development where we're concentrating new redevelopment.
Oh, because I thought we had to move it because the
No.
MBTA had to be walking distance to, the requirement had to be walking distance to the
Those,
train.
again, those in the where the existing platform is, that 40R area and that surrounding areas is within a half a mile of the existing platform on the university campus on a straight line. Now, you get there, you probably have to walk 2 miles because you've got to go up and around, but that meets the requirement.
Okay, so if we didn't build anything, we're already met our requirement for the MBTA.
Right, but if
Okay.
we don't build anything, I go back to the paying for infrastructure.
Yeah. No, I was just making sure.
Mr. Lindy was next. Go ahead, Mr. Lindy.
Just to follow up, the next Vision to Reality you mentioned at the last one would probably be in December.
That's correct.
I'm asking for consideration for early December, or if not early December, early January.
Right.
Just a thought.
Always going to be sensitive to the holidays.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ellenberg?
Mr. President, yes, thank you. Could you please give us an update about 96 Main Street? The reason why I know to ask is there is substantial public interest in the restoration of a historic building. I realize you're looking at housing as the alternative for the building. Have you pursued National Historic Trust funds at all, or has the CPC done so? Do you know?
I can't speak for the CPC. I can speak that the town does not own that property, and therefore we would not go after funding for it. But I can also tell you that the applicant went before the Historic Commission, and the Historic Commission did a site visit on the property and waived the demolition delay. So that project has been green-lighted to be demolished.
If I may?
Go ahead.
But there's nothing been filed with the planning board yet.
Okay. I was under the understanding that one of the people who was on the tour said that the house has, quote, good bones.
I'm not my decision.
I know. If things don't work out with the developers, can we get the CPC involved to use the funds that are taken from taxpayers in the CPC funds to move towards restoration of that building?
I won't speak for the CPC or for Mr. Hunt, but what I will say, and if you recall, you were at the first presentation, the applicants showed several scenarios in terms of the restoration of that property back into a single-family house, into a condominium, and into apartments. Based on the almost $1 million that they paid for the property and what the estimated construction costs were, it was not financially feasible under any of those scenarios, nor could they identify a bank that would lend them money under any scenario to, in fact, do that rehabilitation or restoration.
Mr. President, my understanding was the National Historic Trust could have a citizens group apply for the building. Is that so?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, important to keep in mind that that's private property. It's not a public asset. It's not a town property. It's unlikely that, I can't imagine any scenario that a community group would say, we're going to go get money for you as a private landowner.
Well, the National Historic Trust has programs where one can apply for funds, but we have some in-house funds in our town budget.
So can I just interject? So it's been stated that it's private property. So by all means, if you can find out the property owner, I think these are questions for the property owner. We're not, the town of Bridgewater does not own that property. So,
I understand.
yeah, so I think the questions you're asking may be perfectly valid for the property owner, who would file any number of applications to do anything they want to their own private property. But I think asking the town of Bridgewater doesn't make a lot of sense because we don't own the property.
We don't, but
So
we
I don't
could
think,
potentially.
as a town, we should be speaking on property that we don't own, talking about what property owners can do with their own property. I think that is up to the private property owners. So I want the town of Bridgewater to be very careful about speaking on all of the different things that a private property owner can do with their own private property. We don't speak on anyone else's private homes.
I understand.
When we're talking in public session. If the questions relate to questions about property that the town of Bridgewater owns, by all means, I think the town of Bridgewater needs to answer those. But I don't think the town of Bridgewater should be answering questions about private property.
I understand your situation. The question is whether the town would acquire the property with
Ms. Ellenberg,
CPC
I
funds.
think the answer's been, we've answered the question. We need to really move on.
Certainly, you can have private discussions with the town manager anytime you want about what the town manager's vision is for the town and how it's developed. I think that's probably an appropriate conversation to have. But having further discussions about private property that belongs to someone, I don't think is within any of this government's purview.
Let's
Thank
move
you for
forward.
your opinion.
I'm advising my client to not speak to it any longer.
Let's move forward then to item I, please. Town manager's report. Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I've looked into this with Public Works over the last week, and I understand that this was a property that was privately owned for some length of time with a owner who, I guess, you could get rid of your tires to him, and the tires would end up in a big pile on that property. At some point in the past, that property that person passed away. That property was acquired by the state and is owned by them now. Earlier this year, Mr. Dutton had reached out to the DEP to say, hey, what are you going to do about cleaning up this property? And the person he emailed with said they would research brownfields grants or things like that that would be a financial mechanism to take care of cleaning that up. So having just received that email, I reached out to her yesterday and said, since April when he reached out to you, how's that going? We're very interested in seeing the property cleaned up, and I'm waiting to hear back. So I thought it was helpful to understand that it's state-owned now, so we have certainly a relationship with them to continue to pursue what can you do about taking care of this so it's no longer an eyesore or environmental concern for the town of Bridgewater.
Go ahead,
Town
Mr. McKinnon,
Manager.
question redirect.
I appreciate the update. That's definitely good to know that it's not some random dude, and it could be the state that would look into taking care of that. I just worry, like I said, about the mosquitoes and all that.
Sure.
And I mean, I know you're probably not on the town Facebook page, but there's a Bridgewater residence, and if you type in tire dump fire,
Okay.
you'll see a fire from the 70s or 80s, and
Sure.
that's another thing this town does not need to deal with
I
our
agree.
water problems and all that. And all it takes is one bad group of kids going out in the woods and discovering it, so.
Well, I appreciate you bringing
I
it
just have
back up.
worries about it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any councilors have anything for the town manager for next meeting? Susie first, go ahead, Ms. Robinson.
Yeah, I actually would like to request an update around recreational marijuana sales and the impact to the town, both positive or negative. Just for, brief I realized that was more of a state mandate that ultimately ended up happening, but the town did go to a vote in terms of supporting legislation towards those measures. And it was a very, very close vote in this town, so I would like to just get a general update.
I know that we would usually wait till the next meeting, and I just want to let you know I may not be able to get you a full update at that meeting, given my schedule, but I do know that we have been in the process of signing an agreement with the recreational marijuana group, and I think that may be part of why things haven't moved as quickly in getting you an update, but we will work on it.
Okay, and I would actually like to say, I don't think it's urgent to have for the next meeting. I think,
Right.
just making sure it doesn't fall off the radar.
Absolutely.
So if it's a few meetings from now, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other council, Council Lindy?
Just want to find out the proper protocol. Our next meeting is the 1st of October, I believe. When do I need to get items to the town manager? I forgot my list at home. I had a binder and it had a couple of notes, but I don't have it with me.
I think you can always send the town manager, as long as it's been posted properly. I think it's fine.
Okay.
That's within the discretion of the town manager, what the town
Right.
manager wants to put on that
It would be
list.
before, I would.
Yeah, I mean,
hold
you want to give enough time so that when the meeting's posted, the items are posted, that's
Right.
all.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Answer your question. Any other questions? Councilor McKinnon?
I just have one request for an update, and I'll get you up to speed on it too, like I did the last thing. So Winter Street, this is all on camera too, recorded from previous meetings. Mr. Dutton did say that money was sitting to the side waiting for re-engineering to get done for the street. We had to move, I think, 6 National Grid poles, and I was just wondering where we were at with there, because we have taken care of some streets, which is always good, no matter what streets they are, but Winter Street, it's one of the worst. That part of Winter Street is one of our worst streets in the town,
Okay.
for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? Seeing none? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. All right, moving forward, no discussions or, actually, do we have any committee reports? Anybody want to make a report regarding the committee? It's Lindy.
Just a report that Finance Committee has to meet on the items that we will refer at the next meeting, and we will wait that. That's the day before our next, well, no, that's next week. And then we will meet as Budget and Finance at 6:30 the night of the council meeting.
Very good. Any other committee reports? Seeing none? All right, next up, legislation for action. First thing up is Order OFY 25-012, contract for the acting town manager. Again, so what we're looking to do here, firstly, is to vote to suspend the rules so we can act on this evening. So I will ask for a motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
And a second by Ms. Robinson. Can I get a roll call vote for the suspension of rules, please?
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Sorry,
Mr.
yes.
Chase?
Yes.
Ms. Striggles?
Yes.
And Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
8 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, so that is enough to suspend the rules. So now, based on obviously the discussions we had in executive session, we came to agreements on the contract. So I look for a vote to approve the contract for the interim town manager.
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Stiggles, and a second by Ms. Robinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll again ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Striggles?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes?
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, so motion carries. I will ask councilors just to get signatures on that before you leave here tonight. Thank you all for the support of that.
We have to reinstate the rules. Do you have to?
No, that was just for that particular. Next up, Resolution RFY 25-001, National POW MIA Recognition Day, brought forward by Councilors Lindy and Striggles. Councilor Lindy, do you want to address it?
Sure. We had heard that the POW MIA Recognition Day is this upcoming Friday. My phone is dead, so I can't see the date. And we put forth this resolution to the council to display the POW MIA flag. There will be a brief ceremony at 9 o'clock on Friday morning from 9 to 9:20. And then we're going to work on the flag being permanent after that. That'll come with future legislation.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything additional, Ms. Striggles? Okay. Let's see. So again, we can vote on this evening so we can get this in place for the 20th. So do I have a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
And a second by Mr. McKinnon. Any further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, this is a vote for it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lindy and Ms. Striggles, for bringing it forward. All right, moving forward. We do not have any old business, but we do have some new business. First thing up, proposed General Ordinance DFY 25-007. Acceptance of MGL Section 33, Chapter 33, Section 59, military service on salary, seniority, and leaves allowances for public employees. Basically, this is an update to federal regulations that's just bringing the town into compliance with this particular situation, obviously providing more coverage for military members that are members of the town so they can get paid. I will ask for a motion to refer this to rules and procedures.
Second.
And a second? Okay, second. Just again, a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that'll move to rules and procedures.
May I ask a question
Go ahead.
about this? So this is just to bring us up to speed?
Yes, because currently the town is not following with the federal law on this, so this is going to get the town in compliance.
Do we know how long that we've?
It increases it, I believe, from up to 40 days.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, how long we've not been compliant?
Oh, that I'm not sure of, but it's just to get the town up to speed on it.
Okay.
All right, next up, Order OFY 25-017, acceptance of tangible property from Bridgewater State University. Again, I believe we could potentially act on this directly as a council if we vote to suspend the rules.
Question?
I'm sorry? All right, well, let me say, motion to suspend the rules,
Second.
number one, and a second. Any further discussion on that? I just need a roll call vote to suspend the rules.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
And Ms. McGrath.
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Very good. So we have suspended the rules so we can actually act on it now, but we can have some discussion on it as well.
Can I give you some background on it?
Very good. Yes, please.
So it's actually coming from the foundation, not from Bridgewater State University.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
It's their
foundation.
nonprofit. So as you all know, the town acquired the old mobile station on Summer Street. There has been some strong effort put in for the redesign and looking at the reuse of the station. Bridgewater State University has been part of that. There is presently discussions with the state for some grant funding. However, the university, through the foundation, would like to donate materials, labor, planting to clean it up in the interim period. They're looking to do that hopefully before homecoming. It's not going to do anything to what our plans are, it'll complement it. However, we need to get you to authorize it so they can move on it.
Very good. So again, with that, I'd look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Lindy, and second for discussion. Mr. McKinnon, any councilors have any questions on the matter? Did you have a question, Ms. Ellenberg?
I had questions. Mr. really answered them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any councilors? Ms. Robinson?
Sorry, just a practical question around safety. Is there anything of concern around safety on the property?
No, I mean, it's been cleaned. Our DPW has been out there doing some trimming and doing some things. We would coordinate through the highway department just to make sure that all safety protocols are being adhered to. And there's going to be waivers of liability that they're going to have to sign, so we're not responsible should somebody get hurt.
Are you saying safety of like the general public going onto the property, or are you just saying while we're working on the property to fix it up or whatever?
No, for the, whoever, likely the students or whomever are volunteers.
Yeah, I
as
don't
part
think
of
we're
this
making the
foundation.
property accessible to anyone.
No, they're just cleaning it up. for
They're
the-
just cleaning it up.
Okay,
Different, yeah, they're not like making it so that it's this accessible property. People shouldn't be entering it. It's
Yeah.
just, they want to clean it up because it doesn't look great,
Yeah.
so.
no, understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Strigels?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. All right, so that'll move forward. That wraps up new business for this evening and all of our business for this evening. So we will move on to citizens' comments. If any citizens would like to come up and speak, I invite you now.
We
And
have two
again,
citizens.
citizen, again, due to Massachusetts open meeting law requirements, discussions will not take place during the public comment period. If appropriate questions, responses to questions, concerns will be given by the town manager at a future town council meeting.
Carlton Hunt, Austin Street, we have 3 of us out here. In the future, please bring that screen down so the citizens sitting out here don't have to do this to see the screen. That's unconscionable.
You're here.
You guys can see it plainly. We couldn't. I had to stand here for an hour. By the way, that was a great presentation on the sewer. I've actually looked at that plan, and I have a little background in that kind of terminology, that kind of thing. I did that for a career. They did a good job. It's a hell of a lot of money, but they did a good job. They only failed one thing. They didn't take climate change into account and the fact that sea level rise could hit that plant in the next 40 years. Also, one last point. I'm going to ask the ad hoc committee to not elect the president of this council as the committee chair because he's going to be too busy doing work, helping our acting town manager get her work done. So I think someone else ought to take that chairmanship on that has a little bit less responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Anybody else? Mrs. Hanson.
Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. Thank you guys for all the stuff you're doing. I too was going to say, again, somebody keeps stealing my comments, but I still want to just go on record. the president of the town council should not be on the committee because of all their other responsibilities. It doesn't matter who he or she is. It just, I feel that they shouldn't be. Vice president's okay, other people okay, but I just feel that the president shouldn't because you have a lot of other responsibilities. And I was glad to hear, I was ready to ask or say that we shouldn't be forced to tie into the sewer if we don't want to. I was glad to hear that Ms. Striegel said that we didn't have to, because I have a septic, and, when the sewer goes by, I didn't want to be forced. At one time, they were saying that you would have to be forced to tie into it, and I don't want that expense. It's a lot cheaper for me. We do keep up with it. Cheaper for us to have a septic. So I'm glad to hear that no one's forced to tie into it just because it goes by their house. And I was just wondering when that survey that we had about I forget the name of it, but we went to the college and had that presentation about the safety of pedestrians. When is that? I missed. When is that survey going to be available for the public, and how do we see it? Is it going to be on the website? I don't know if anybody can answer that right now.
Is that the vision? Sorry.
After, okay. It's the one we did at the college, and we had to put the posties on, and I will say and I did mention to them that I felt that the presentation was funny. They're showing all the pedestrians trying to cross the street and everything, but it was kind of one-sided. They really put a negative tone on it. Yes, there's good and bad on the crossing, but it was the comments that they put, the headlines and whatever, the titles, it was very one-sided. So I just want to try to keep the town safe, but also quaint and not disturb a lot of things. But thank you guys for all your time, okay?
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson. I think we've run out of public. All right, so thank you for those that commented. We will move on to council comments. I'll start to my left today with Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Council Lindy and Council Strigels for sponsoring the POW and my flag resolution on behalf of my family, as well as the other families that have members that have not come home. On September 29th, as a town council, I'll have a table at the Autumn Fest at BSU to recruit and inform residents about our town committees, commissions, and boards. All members of committees, past and present, are welcome at this table, and I hope that you show up because no one can inform residents of the importance of these committees, commissions, and boards better than you. Joshua McGuire has made a list of these, and we'll have 100 handouts to give. And the only thing I ask is that you bring a chair, and if you have any questions, you can email me or Joshua. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council McGrath. Council Strigels.
Thank you. I thank you for that sentiment. It was something that meant a lot to me to do for the town. We actually heard from constituents last week about the importance of it. So Councilor Lindy and I were kind of sitting on our hands last week, knowing that it was going to be a resolution this week. So I'm really happy that we were able to get it done in time. I want to thank the citizens, our lovely 2 citizens that are here, making sure that their voices are still heard at the 11th hour at 9:32. And I also want to comment on some of the comments that were made by citizens earlier. We're not all going to agree up here, and that's not why you elected us. You didn't elect us to be yes people amongst each other. You elected us to follow a process, disagree, and come to some level of a consensus. We might not all agree with how votes go. As citizens, you might not agree with how things turn out, but we are all volunteers doing our very best for the people of Bridgewater, because that is why we raised our hand to do this job. So please keep that in mind as judgments are thrown around. I can say that I respect everybody that is sitting up here, whether you've served on a search committee or not. We were all elected by the people of Bridgewater, so I feel we have a unique ability to serve the people of Bridgewater in any capacity that we're called upon to do. So that's all I wanted to say, and just remind everyone that we are doing a volunteer service for all of you, and to just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Councilor Strigels. Councilor Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just if I could, just a very brief comment also with respect to to the ad hoc committee process and overall the selection of the new permanent town manager. It's, since the beginning of this topic, some now couple of months ago, it's always been my opinion that because the charter gives the power to select the new town manager to the members of the town council exclusively, that it only made sense to me that the ad hoc preliminary screening committee be comprised of the maximum number of town councilors, and that would be 4, as we know, to not produce a quorum of the entire council, but that those 4 members would be really instrumental in providing to the full council, all of our colleagues, the best information we could, having directly interfaced with each one of the candidates. So that was the reason for which I still do and have always thought it made the most sense for 4 councilors to be appointed to the ad hoc committee, as has now been ratified by our vote tonight. I am sure that this process is going to be a very transparent one in terms of what the citizens want to see and expect to learn, and I'm certainly going to devote my attention to exactly that result, to making sure that any citizen comments, queries can be taken into consideration. I think that's going to be a number 1 priority for every member of the ad hoc committee. But I thank you all for having participated in the decision tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Mr. Lindy.
So, a couple of things. The video that was done with the people in Central Square, I walk it every day. I actually think it's accurate, and it's difficult, and it's unsafe. And hopefully we'll be able to correct that with what Mr. Rulli and other people are doing. Wanted to let you know, because we don't have a council meeting prior to this date, the Friends of the Library are going to do a book sale on Saturday the 29th. Not sure 100% whether it's at the library. We're going to do it at Autumn Fest, but we're going to coordinate that so people know about that. There's a group that's been formed. And lastly, I don't disagree with my colleagues. I respect all my colleagues. I'm just going to say that I'm consistent, that I did not like the process. I also, it's not because I feel that I'm better or I have more experience. I do have more experience. I just don't like the process. I hope it's going to be a good process. I know it's going to be narrowed down, but it's hard when you get the narrowed down candidates, and there is a possibility that we could miss a good one. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Mr. Murphy.
I'll pass, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Ellenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make a few comments in terms of citizens' involvement and so forth. Someone recently brought up to me, and I don't know if this has been remedied, that the nets on the basketball hoops are disappeared and there's just hoops. I don't know if the facts of that. The point is the person wanted to volunteer to put up nets. And that brings us to the issue of volunteers. So, I just wanted to say in my counselor comments, it's the duty of all of us Americans to participate in our little bit of citizenship, that sliver of our citizenship part. And why does it matter? I'm from Illinois, the land of Lincoln, who said that government should be by the people, of the people, and for the people. So, why does this matter about volunteers? And I wanted to say thank you to our town manager, our acting town manager, who provided me with a copy of the insurance rider that allows for volunteers. Thank you. Now, the issue of volunteers has further ramifications into our government. we have a bunch of subcommittees which are not populated. They are in essence hollow subcommittees. Now, I have also spoken to people who have actually approached me surreptitiously to say that they were a volunteer on a subcommittee and were essentially driven out. I'm sorry, but that's what they said to me. So, we know volunteers matter, and I would ask the town manager to provide a list of all the hollow committees and what positions and slots are open for counselors or citizens or whatever, a list of the hollow committees and their slots. Okay, and then there's been a lot of talk on public Facebook that volunteers who live in town sincerely care for this town, like all of us here who are working for free. There are the question of those who are not as committed because they don't live in town. So it's very important to have town volunteers to populate the hollow committees and all of that kind of thing. Okay? And lastly, I just wanted to say the best of the West in terms of Western civilization is right here, democracy. Okay? And also that we act in a proper way as volunteers, and the insurance covers that there will, if it's inappropriate behavior, it's not covered, but we know volunteers will be ladies and gentlemen. And so, as my last comment, I just want to say, I want to encourage the general citizenry to step forward for appointments on these subcommittees. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Ellenberg. Ms. Robinson?
No comments from me, thank you.
All right, and Mr. McKinnon?
Just a quick one. How awesome was that earlier? We were around some state champions, huh? First time ever. I mean, I'm not going to bring up the year I graduated high school because I don't want to feel old, but the year after, the BR baseball team won the state championship, and I actually have a feeling we might get another one when those kids get a little older themselves, too. So that's it from me. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Yeah, to wrap up again, it was wonderful to have the state champs here tonight. I was making some arrangements with them over the past number of weeks to find a time that they could all come, and it was great to honor them, and they represented the town very, very well. Again, with the proclamations that we did, thanking all the veterans, VFW members, in celebration of their 125th anniversary, and BCCR and all the people associated with helping pull together the City of Peace, and with their events coming on up. Again, please pay attention to the schedule, starting September 21st to 28th. Annual Peace in Bridgewater and beyond. So a lot of great events going on there. Just to comment, Ms. McGrath, it's wonderful that you're putting together the booth there at Autumn Fest. I would just caution you in maybe scheduling counselors so we don't have too many there at one point in time.
Or post for Autumn Fest.
And again, in regards to the process, I mean, we've got to a point now, we've got an ad hoc in place, we've got people on the ad hoc. Whether people believe as a president I should be on there or not, I mean, I'm a lifelong resident of the town, I'm a business owner, I've been on the council 6 years. I know what it's like to work with a town manager. We've got some good other counselors, and Mr. Fitzgibbons, who's been through it before. I think we've got a very good representation on the ad hoc to get us going forward in this process. And again, it's going to be a public process. The firm we will bring in is going to interview the public, is going to get as much public feedback as possible to get the information that we need to bring the right people in front of us. And as an entire council, we are going to choose that town manager going forward. And my hope is we can get to the point where it would be a unanimous choice. And that's going to be very important in hiring someone to represent us going forward. With that being said, that's all I have. I will
Motion to
ask for a motion
adjourn.
to adjourn. Mr. McKinnon, and second by Ms.
Second.
Striggles.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.